Dear grade 11 students, how are you all? Yesterday we did chapter 24.1. Today we're going to do chapter 24.2, grammar, making clear comparisons. Yesterday we talked about the degrees of comparison when we use modifiers, or in other words, adjectives and adverbs in comparison. We said there are 3 degrees: positive, like tall; comparative, like taller; superlative, like tallest. And when we talk about adverbs, we said that all the adverbs, or almost all the adverbs ending in ly, we make the comparative by adding more before the adverb and most before the adverb in the superlative. Comparative, more, for example, more easily, most easily, easily, more easily, most easily. We also talked about irregular comparatives like good. Uh, Good becomes better in comparative and best in superlative. Bad becomes worse and worst, as you know. And well is treated the same way like good. Well, better, best, and badly is like bad, worse, and worst. We have farther when we talk about distance, far, farther, farthest. And when we talk about extent or ideas or notions, thoughts, we say far, further, and furthest. Okay. Today we're going to complete the lesson, making clear comparisons. Once you have mastered the forms of regular and irregular modifiers, you can learn how to use these forms to make clear comparisons. In this section, you will learn how to use the comparative and superlative degrees correctly, how to make logical comparisons, and how to recognize modifiers that should not be used in comparisons, using comparative and superlative degrees. One basic rule covers the correct use of comparative and superlative forms, which is use the comparative degree to compare two persons, to places, to things. Use the superlative degree to compare 3 or more persons, places, or things. It's not necessary to mention specific numbers when making a comparison. The context of the sentence should indicate whether 2 items or more than 2 items are being compared. Look at this example. This is comparative. My broker is more dependable than Florence's. My portfolio is larger than his. He requires less money than she does. Superlative, this is the most dependable broker I know. This is the largest portfolio I've ever had. He requires the least possible number of material, this or things to make him happy. Occasionally, rarely, the superlative degree is used just for emphasis without any specific comparison. This usage is more acceptable in informal writing than informal writing. Look at the example. He is the greatest. He is the greatest. Okay. She was most treacherously betrayed. Note about double comparisons. Remember this expression, double comparisons. A double comparison is an error in usage caused by using both er and more, or both est and most, to form a regular modifier. And this is very common in spoken English. A double comparison can also be caused by adding er or est or more or most to a modifier that is irregular. Incorrect. Look at this example. Your workload is more heavier. Here we have more and heavier, more and er than mine. This is double comparison, which is incorrect. The stock is performing worse than ever. The stock is performing worser. It's not worse. Worser is not an English verb, or is not an English word. Sorry, we have worse or worst. Worser is not an English word than ever. Your workload is heavier. This is correcting it. Correcting the first example. Not more heavier. It's heavier only. And here worse only. Exercise 14. Write the appropriate comparative or superlative degree of the modifier in parentheses. Number one, many people think stocks are, of course, it's good, will become better than bonds. Number two, some investments are riskier than others. Number three, stocks often have the biggest, BIGGEST. Exercise 15, rewrite each sentence, correcting any errors in the usage of comparative modifiers. Each worker on the floor seems to be trying to shout more louder. Of course, more is not correct here. Shout louder. This is double comparison. Number two, however, the activity is most organized than it appears. Of course, we need more, not most here. Number three, the loud shouting allows more wide. More wide is not the correct form. It should be wider. Okay, let's move on to the next point using logical comparisons. Two common usage problems involving comparisons are the comparison of unrelated items and the comparison of something with itself. Balanced comparisons. When you write a comparison, be certain that the two or more things being compared are properly balanced. Otherwise, the comparison may be illogical and even ridiculous, silly. Here, make sure that your sentences compare only items of a similar kind. In the following unbalanced sentences, the sentences illogically compare dissimilar things. Unbalanced, this is an unbalanced example. Jim's portfolio is better balanced than Ray. Here, I compare the portfolio to Ray, a thing to someone. This is unbalanced. This is illogical. So how can we make it balanced or logical? By making it this way. Jim's portfolio is better balanced than Ray's portfolio. Okay, here I compare a portfolio to a portfolio, but in the first example, I compared the portfolio to Ray, a person. Another example, the yield from this stock is higher than a bond. The yield from this stock is higher than a bond. It's illogical. The yield from this stock is higher than the yield from a bond. Because I can compare the stock to the bond, and I can compare the yield of the stock to the yield of or from the bond. A third example, the damage from the panic of 1907 was less than the one in 1929. The damage from the panic of 1907 was less than the one in 1929. If I compare the damage to the panic, this is not correct. The damage from the panic of 1907 was less than that from the crash of 1929. As you can see here, portfolio cannot be compared to Ray, as we said. We explained this part. Let's go to exercise 16. We have an example. Rewrite each sentence, correcting the unbalanced comparison. Emily's stock was more profitable than Luke. It should be Emily's stock was more profitable than Luke's stock. Number one here, the New York Stock Exchange is larger than London. I compare the stock exchange to London, stock exchange to a city. That's wrong. The New York Stock Exchange is larger than London Stock Exchange. Number two, the stock market crash of 1929 was more severe than 1907. It should be corrected this way. The stock market crash of 1929 was more severe than the stock market crash of 1907. Other and else in comparison, another illogical comparison, which is similar to an unbalanced comparison, results when something is inadvertently compared with itself. Like when comparing one of a group with the rest of the group, make sure that your sentence contains the word other or the word else. Adding other or else in such situations will make the comparison clear. Look at the first example, which is illogical. John was busier than any broker on the floor. John was busier than any broker on the floor. It should be this way. John was busier than any other broker on the floor. Okay. Ruth worked harder than anyone in the office. It should be Ruth worked harder than anyone else in the office. In the first set of examples, this set, because John is one of the brokers on the floor, he cannot logically be compared to all of the brokers because he's one of them. Understand? This is why we use the word other, and here we use the word else. If you leave it here like this, then you compare John to himself, to all the others, including himself, and the same with Ruth here. Exercise 17. Rewrite each sentence using other or else to correct the illogical comparison. The New York Stock Exchange is larger than any exchange. This is wrong because larger than any exchange, including itself. The New York Stock Exchange is larger than any other exchange. Number one, establishing a stock exchange is fairer than any way to set stock prices. Any other way, it should be any other way. The New York Stock Exchange is more famous than any exchange, it should be any other exchange. That we need to add other or else to exclude the compared item from this comparison. Avoiding comparisons with absolute modifiers. Some modifiers cannot be used logically to make comparison because their meaning is absolute, perfect. That is, their meanings are entirely contained in the positive degree. For example, if a line is vertical, another line cannot be more vertical because it's 100% vertical. Either a line is vertical or it is not. There are no degrees of verticality. Vertical, that's it, 90 degrees, okay? Some other common absolute modifiers are dead. Somebody is dead. I can say another body is deader or the deadest one. Entirely, which means completely. Fatal, final, what's after final? Nothing. Identical, opposite, what's after opposite? More opposite? Perfect means 100%. And unique is like no other. So these are absolute modifiers. They cannot be used in comparison. Often, it is not only the word more or most that makes an absolute modifier illogical. Sometimes an absolute modifier alone is illogical in the context of a sentence. In such cases, it is best to replace the absolute modifier with one that expresses the intended meaning more precisely. Avoid using absolute modifiers illogically in comparisons. Look at this example. Of all the stock market panics, that one was the most fatal. You know, fatal can't be used here, but we can use the word the most severe or the most difficult or the most decisive. In the preceding example, the most fatal is illogical because something is either fatal or is not fatal. We don't have degrees of fatality. However, even fatal by itself would be an illogical overstatement. Most severe better conveys the intended meaning. Okay, look at the example here or the exercise. Correct the illogical comparison in each sentence by replacing the absolute modifier with one or more other words. Some people believe that the stock exchange is the most perfect. Instead of the most perfect, we can say the best, because perfect is perfect. It is one of the most unique expressions of capitalism. Instead of the most unique, we can say the most particular, the most special, and so on. And this is the end of today's lesson. Thank you very much.